Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round one of the new Monday Championship. It is the turn of the little buzz boxes. It's the Ginetta Cup here, broadcast live from Kyalami on RCI TV. And joining me alongside for this, what looks to be quite a crazy season, is John Dalton. And normally, this is the part of the show where we say, and featuring someone, but there's no one. There's just me and John here. Everyone else was a little bit busy to come watch the little buzz boxes. So you've got me on all of the buttons, and John's gonna hopefully give all the stats and the and everything else that's in between.
Yeah, certainly. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you're around the world. As Ryan said, obviously, Ginetta Cup now welcomes us on the Monday night season. And, continuing the new theme, this will be also alternating weeks of a 60-minute race with a mandatory stop versus two 20-minute races with no stopping. Tonight, we're obviously bringing you round one from a very warm and clear Kyalami with Ryan Mawson. Ryan, the multitasker Mawson, should we say, with him behind the cameras and in the booth, and obviously myself and obviously the stewards as well in the box. This is going to be a super exciting championship. I really can't wait to get underway, Ryan.
Oh, it's gonna be madness is the only way to put this. The Ginettas are already quite an interesting car to drive, and you put everyone in a Spec Cup series where no one, apart from setups, has any kind of advantage, and the racing gets even tighter, especially as well when you take them to some of the bigger circuits that we've got on this calendar. Kyalami is a fairly nice wide circuit with a fair old straight on it, and these cars were more designed for Brands Hatch, Alton Park, and anywhere that you could probably call a postage stamp.
Yeah, they are certainly designed for the much smaller circuits. Traditionally, a support series alongside the BTCC. Unfortunately, the contract has ended and moved over to the SRO Championship as of next year. So we might even see these in real life at some of these bigger circuits and see how the racing progresses. But as you said, Brian, typically a little short sprint circuit, jumping over the curbs, very touring car style. But at these bigger, wider circuits, obviously the very short wheelbase, very narrow in width as well. You're going to get a lot of these side by side, especially down to turn one. We all know how wide turn one is here at Kyalami. So, anybody's guess at who is going to be first into that corner. And like Kota, we saw at the weekend, a very big pinch point as well in turn one of the hairpin. But some of these drivers are going to have to adjust to sitting on the right side of the car, Brian. A lot of European drivers too used to the left-hand side, maybe.
Well, you mean the correct hand side for all of us, and for any Bentley driver, then they'll feel fine and at home. But yeah, for everyone else, they're gonna have to get used to sitting on the wrong side. They're also gonna have to get used to an engine which has absolutely no power unless you are at the red line. All of the Ginetta's power is way hidden at the top of the rev band. You can't short shift this car. Well, I mean, you can, but it doesn't necessarily gain you anything in the terms of traction. And there's only really one way to drive a Ginetta, which is throw it through like a go-kart. As you can see Andy Boardman for the Grease Weasel Racing, sliding it one way this way, and you almost got it, Andy. But that is what can happen with a Ginetta. Once the tank slappers start getting away from you, it's like when you have a tank slapper in a go-kart, it starts getting a speed wobble on, and you can never quite catch it, and before you know it, you're in the wall.
Yeah, certainly. So you said about those go-kart aspects, chucking it in to the corner was Andy Boardman, taking a little bit too much curve on the inside, bounced him a little bit wide into the gravel, and of course a massive wiggle on that he unfortunately could not save. But tonight, Ryan, we do have a super competitive field with so many regular drivers and a few new faces cropping up as well. Some of you might remember the dominance from Dario Barzaghi in the Deutschland Masters last time out on Monday. We've got the Asia Masters Championship, Christoph Verstappen, and we've also got big regular RCI names, including Wolf Matuszka, Adam Dubil, Jordan Daly, Chris Downing, Andy Boardman, Tom Shipston, Mikael Sundstrom, the Nordquists, and still so many names I haven't touched on this 40-car entry list. But everybody out of the pit lane, Ryan, in very speedy fashion tonight. Obviously, no tyre blankets in the GT4 format, so everybody is going to be going out, trying to get as much heat into these Pirellis, as they can do over the next little bit of the session. But everybody's going to be jostling for track position. I've seen a few drivers talking earlier that they don't want to be queuing up in qualifying. They want everybody to be flat out from the get-go, obviously, to just generate as much heat into the tires as they can.
Yeah, you kind of have to do in any of the GT4 cars, and the Ginetta really don't put much heat into the tires at all. Being so light, it's it's one of the lighter of the GT4 cars when you compare it to the likes of, say, the BMW, which runs in the same class, and everyone bunching up at Kyalami. It is a big circuit, but the Ginettas, I have a feeling they won't really be able to escape one another just because of the the spec racing and the fact that the person behind, if you've got slipstream, it might give you a slight advantage, but if they are the tiniest bit slower than you in the corners, what can you do? You can't power past them like if you were in a car with more speed, or you just had more grip, like the difference we see between the GT3 cars and some of the other GT4s. It's going to be a very, very interesting season to sort of watch and see how the drivers get on with that. But the first man out of the grid will be Christoph Verstappen in the number 7 at Ginetta, and we'll see an onboard lap coming through Kyalami. This is technically turn 1, although let's face it, no one classifies that kink as a turn really. You just brush the steering wheel down into what will be turn 2, heavy down the gearbox. A lot of drivers use the gearbox to slow it down, and I love the fact that this is still an old air shift car. You can hear the air solenoids clicking away. Through to turn 2 and 3, it can be very easily to unsettle the car because of the camber of this corner. You're coming back up onto a flat, put the foot down too early, and you can light up the rears. And then sunset, you have to be so patient here. You're turning it in, and you see you've got to be patient on the throttle. You're balancing it, you're waiting for the car to finally grip up and give you that confidence to put it back down. Clubhouse, you do not want to touch the inside curb. Run out as much as you can, just because the GT4, you can't tuck it in as wide. And then the S's, a lot of people want to take the curb on the inside, as Christoph Verstappen does actually very, very well. You've got to get the car kind of settled, as that bump can also be your undoing in a race, and I know how very much about that in some races. Top of the hill, giving us a great view out into South Africa. I mean, it looks great in the day. In the nighttime, it looks even better. Sadly, we won't be racing here at night, but hey, maybe we can give that idea to Ted Edwards sometime for a bit of a crazy race, sometime. And then coming down to Crocodiles, the corner of a million lines. No one really knows how to take this corner. I don't really think there's a specific line. And then the most dangerous circuit, the most dangerous part of the circuit is Cheetah running up to the final corner. You really don't want to hit the inside curb of Cheetah. Will spit you off into the gravel. And Christoph Verstappen, as he runs up to the line, it looks a very clean and collected lap, and it's a 1:49.865. That is a blistering time for lap 1.
Yeah, certainly a great time set there from Christoph Verstappen, one of our Asia Master champions from previous seasons. And Benjamin Heilmann, our man that is usually behind the camera provisionally with a P5 with a 150.5, although a lot of times are going to be up and down, shuffled about as these Pirelli start coming into their window. You're going to be looking maybe the best part of 2 laps to get them fully up to temperature, along with the brakes. Obviously, you can get your brakes nice and warm, tends to radiate through the disc into the rim and into the Pirellis. This man here, Jose Jimenez, was very quick in practice as well, sticking it very far near the top 4. A silver driver, definitely 1 lap pace, quite strong. But going back to your point earlier, Ryan, about spec racing, it is literally about those, those tenths you can gain. If you're a tenth faster than the guy ahead of you coming out of a corner, you're a tenth later on the brakes than he is, you're going to start making a lot of headwind, and you're going to be passing these people left, right and centre, but you're going to hit a brick wall eventually when you come up to that guy that is running identical lap times as yourself. It's going to be very, very hard to get past anybody. And this man here, João Manso, again, a regular here at RCI. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but it does just prove how many of these drivers keep coming back time and time again on to the Monday circuit. But the RPMS boys are in strong showing here. Keep an eye out for them. They will be a force to be reckoned with, as Benjamin Heilmann here comes towards the end of his lap down into the Crocodiles of turn 13 towards 14 of Cheetah. Going to have to keep it very clean. I've seen Benjamin be very brave through here in practice. Not too wide over the curb and into the grass. More than likely going to be an invalid lap for our cameraman.
Yeah, that was an invalid lap, and it sort of shows what can happen at Cheetah. You're just that tiny little bit too wide, and you can't save the car, no matter what you do in a GT4. Once you've committed to the line and the car's gone over there, that is it. But it shows as well, how quickly it can go wrong and how quickly you can lose that time, because Benjamin Heilman, right up to that corner, was half a second up. And then all that time vanished, as now provisional pole has been taken over by the Pink Performance, the number 25 Wolf Matuszka, the man who I believe was very, very high in pre-quali. And it was an interesting pre-quali because they did pre-qualification here at Kyalami. Normally we have a different circuit that the drivers will pre-quali on and do their hot stints, as it's not a hot lap, so their pair of hot stints. But it gave us at least an interesting insight into what the pace might be. But the thing that I was thinking about, John, is that you can be great in the Ginetta, you can be very fast, but it's going to be a bit like it's going to be a bit like a slipstream race, because nobody is going to want to be at the front of the queue every single time you'll see, in the race. I think unless you're a god in a Ginetta with everyone so close, you're just going to end up being caught up on the straights with the slipstream and then have to battle. If they get by you, that's fine. You have the slipstream, you battle them, and it's just gonna stack up the more we go on.
Yeah, I'm going to say a lot of slipstreaming is going to be happening here, Ryan, especially down, like you say, the start straight away very wide. You can almost snake the train up into the pit wall and back across to the racing line as well to try and defend your position. But this man here, Chris Downing of the Volpers Simsport, again, another driver we saw with a very strong showing out of the Deutschland Masters last time out, crosses the line. William Provey does not, unfortunately. P9 currently residing. I'm expecting a little bit more as he slips down the order. P10, P11. Downing is going down, unfortunately, and he does need to be, on the next couple of laps. 7 minutes to go. We see Adam DeBille here for the Forza Italia PL Racing Team take provisional 4th place with a very solid time indeed, as Verdi comes through the final sector of the circuit, down the hill towards mineshaft of turn 12 in the number 89 Ginetta. Looking towards the timing board, he is pretty much on par with his fastest lap so far. But has he got anything to gain in the last couple of corners? Got to keep it clean through the crocodiles of 13 and technically 14 before flicking it right towards the yellow curve of Cheetah. Coming through very cleanly, no wheels dipped into the grass at all, and approaching the last turn hard on the brakes. Turn 16, want to get it tucked in, jump on the power nice and early, but not too early. Want to minimize any sideways action coming towards the line. Maximilian Verde comes across the line, still remains P3 with a 1:49.9. However, does prove that these guys can churn out some consistent laps. We've got the top, what is it, Ryan? Top 13 separated by less than half a second. This is absolutely crazy scenes, and I can't wait for these boys to start gritting up.
And that's with the silver class only 0.3 off the actual pro leader as well, which shows that necessarily class might not really affect it. Now this is interesting. Christoph Verstappen had a little bit of time, and I thought that they might try and maximize that to the line. It looks like they had a few tenths of a second. It actually slows down, maybe to try and get just a little bit more track position, and have a bit of a cleaner run. There's a car coming out of the pits, but they will obviously have to yield that position, not on a lap. That was interesting from the number 7 driver, but yeah, this grid is going to be spectacular, I think, is the only word we're going to be seeing. And actually coming up to the line, this man, I mentioned the silver class leader, that they might steal the show. Well, coming up to the line, it's going to be very close for Jimenez, and it's going to be P3, a 10th off, but they lost some time coming out of that final corner. And that's kind of what we were saying earlier, is that the Ginetta, you have to maximize every corner, every braking zone, every stamp of the accelerator has to be perfect if you want to be the difference between 13th and 2nd. And speaking of, Gierkowski now throws that car into 2nd. It's getting very close for Wolf Matuszka, as now the gap is now under a 10th of a second.
Yeah, super crazy times coming out from these guys. We got less than half a second now between the top 14. It's gained another position as Nat Shirley in the number 1 Ginetta fellow Brit comes up towards the line. A little bit of a slipstream from the pink car ahead, a flash in the headlights to say, I'm still here, still remains in P18 with 4 minutes 20 just over to go. The pink car peels to the side to allow him through, but Verstappen did have some time in that previous lap, and I'm very surprised he bailed it in order to take another lap. However, we know, Ryan, these Pirelli tyres will only just kind of be coming into their kind of window towards the later half of this qualifying as fuel burns off, tyres get hotter, brakes get hotter. Albin Manson there, P13 for the Sim Brothers racing car. Absolutely love this livery, Ryan. The Jurassic Park, you know, something about it really suits the kind of quirkiness of the Ginetta, and of course, fantastic custom liveries up and down the field. It's great to see these guys still putting in an effort for this one. But Wolf Matuszka here, provisional pole sitter, coming up to Cheetah in the last segment of his lap, turn 15, keeping it very clean indeed, maximising all of the exit curb down towards turn 16. Got to get it tucked in nice and tight. Wolf get on the power nice and smoothly. No sign of sideways action as he runs towards the line. Wolf Matuszka currently resides provisional pole, does improve with a 1:49.445. Going to be very tricky for these guys to beat him. Wolf very confident in his time, does return to the pit lane, maybe to take some fresh tyres, or maybe just to kind of sit back and think, I think I've done enough here.
Well, obviously, Wolf heard our a statement about maybe it's getting a little bit close, so they just thought, I'll just go out, I'll just fix that one moment and return back to the pits. Matt Stevens, another driver that, once again, had a little bit of time, might return to the pits and try one more flying lap. Had a little bit of time at the end of the lap. It's just... now it's getting very, very difficult. I'm looking up and down the grid, and there's a few people on the greens, but it's so inconsistent. You know, they're green in the Delta 1 minute, and then it just trickles away slowly. And this is when you're kind of getting to the knife edge of what the car can do and what the drivers are really capable of. It gets that kind of difficult in spec racing. And looking all the way down, to get outside of a second, you now have to drop to 21st to get outside of a second. I've also just spotted one of the familiar names on the grid as Manson goes P8 overall. Did you see the livery creeping into the foreground?
Was it a pair of eyes and a giant pair of red lips possibly passing through the bottom right-hand side of our picture? It is, of course, our very regular member here, Jan Yo, I'm being told. It's not Yao, like I've been pronouncing it for the past God knows how many seasons.
You got it right this time, John. I was told off by Jan last time that it's actually Yo, not Yao.
It is Jan Yo. Despite what the yogurt brand in the UK might say on their adverts, this man is Y-O in pronunciation, so we'll be getting that right. But another cursed livery from this man in the number 48 Flying Hellfish Caders racing car. Giant pair of eyes wedged on the bonnet with a giant red mouth around the front. If you do see that in your mirror while we are spec racing in packs with slipstreaming, you are going to be absolutely terrified looking back. So I hope any driver that's driving tonight has got their mirrors maybe turned off or on very low settings, so you're not seeing the fidelity of this livery. However, Jan looking very good on his Delta, at least he was, until he navigated the top of the hill, and it has all slightly come to pot in turn 10 and 11, down towards mineshaft of turn 12 into the crocodiles of 13 and soon to be 14. But Joe Dorber, a man we've not really spoken about, another RCI member in the 777 Ginetta, coming up towards the line, looking at the Delta, looking not too bad indeed. Can he improve from P9 at all? The 777 crosses the line, jumps himself up into P6 with a 1:49.9. And obviously anybody now is cutting it very thin towards doing another lap. But look at the circuit map, Brian. All these Ginettas crowded together across the top of the hill. This is going to be some very good stuff if we can get these guys stuck together.
Yeah, everyone's kind of having a mad dash to the line, but there's only going to be maybe 1 or 2 cars looking at the track map that are going to actually get another bite of the apple. Everyone, it appears, has either grouped up or they've all gone into the pits and then come back out in a bit of a clump. So this will be the final go around for a lot of the drivers, and if you've got that Delta showing green, you kind of want to maximize it. Maximum Verdi had a good Delta. It's once again just trickled off. Maybe there's a little bit of something left in the final corner for the driver of the 89 virtual drivers by TX3 car, and Squirts it up to the line. What will it be for Verdi? It will not be an improvement. P5 is where this driver will currently settle.
Yeah, unfortunately, like we say, Ryan, it's so easy to lose that tiny little bit of time. But this man here, Jose Jimenez, coming around the final couple of turns up towards Cheetah in the lime green, white and black Ginetta, coming towards the final turn, getting it very over the grass there, trying to maximize again. We're seeing a lot of grass running. Tire pressures are going to be an interesting one for the 1 hour race. Obviously, a lot of drivers probably won't be electing to take tires, only dumping the 1 litre of fuel across the line. No improvement as such. Nat Shirley comes across the line again. No improvement, P12. This man here, Andy Boardman, had a great run in Deutschland Masters as we cut across to Joe Dorber, P6 currently. Any improvement does jump up 1 space to P5, but Andy Boardman for the Greased Weasel Racing, another great driver we see time and time again at RCI Mondays. His luck had turned in the Deutschland Masters. I know Asia Masters for Andy was a bit of a rotten stint. He did pull through the whole season though, so kudos to him, but looking to make a good start at the Ginetta Cup, qualifying in Pro. Currently resides in P15, the car number 69, Greased Weasel Racing. Christopher Streppen just ahead, maybe giving him a little bit of a tow towards the line. Does he improve? He does, up into the top 10. P8 for Andy Boardman. That's more like where we expect him to see. And RCI's very own Ted Edwards in the Race Ventura Pigeon livery. Race Ventura boys, of course, electing a theme with their livery today of birds, Ryan.
Yeah, we were briefed before going on air that Race Ventura this season have decided to take an avian theme, and apparently Ted Edwards is a wood pigeon. So there you go. We'll have to get a brief look at the liveries as we do the grid walk, but. Well, I need to find out what the other Race Venturas are. If we have a wood pigeon. I mean, we've got to have at least a regular pigeon. Can we have like a London pigeon that's just very, very overweight and like ruffled?
A London pigeon with a little Cockney Peaky Blinders flat cap, just going around calling everybody all of the obscenities under the sun. But we will, of course, be checking out some of the liveries as we go towards the grid. But just a little rundown of this season of the Ginetta Cup here on Mondays at RCI. We have round 2 beginning on October 31st, where we find ourselves at Zolder in Belgium for the first of our 2-race format, each segment being 30 minutes long, which might make drivers think twice about holding behind somebody. We see it, time and time again, people biding their space, waiting for their time to move, and then making a move. But with 30 minutes on the clock, it's not going to be so easy. We then head all the way to the land down under for the 1 hour, of Mount Panorama on the 7th of November. Anybody that has driven this car will typically know the gearbox ratio is very, very short. So down the Conrod, this could be a very interesting noise that our grid produces. On November the 14th, we jet all the way back to England for Snetterton with another 2-race format of the 30-minute format as we saw at Zolder. Round 5 back over to the Oceanic region for Suzuka of the 1 hour. That was on November 21st. And then we have a short hop to the USA for round 6 at Watkins Glen. Again, another spec racing kind of circuit. We're going to see probably a lot of slipstreaming around there. So very excited to see that one on the 28th of November before rounding it all off at round 7 in Donington Park on December 5th. And I really, really can't wait to see what this championship brings, Ryan. I'm so excited with so many big names up and down the grid. Drivers are going to be finding their feet. Not a lot of drivers might have driven this car on the regular, but a few of them I know have. I remember very fondly a championship here where I drove a GT4 and I got absolutely spanked by Christopher Streppen in a Ginetta GT4. So some guys here with more seat time than others. You might see some guys being early flyers in this championship, but then, like you say, Ryan, you might see a few of them kind of fighting their way from the back, slipstreaming up, making the most of, the 1 hour. It's great to be fast though for one lap, but we all know ACC is about consistency.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting, that front row, especially when you've got Wolf Matuszka on the inside line and Christoph Verstappen on the outside. A driver who is known to be quite an early charger is Christoph Verstappen. You know, once the green flag drops, it's game on really for the number 7. So that is definitely going to be a battle right off the bat, I can think. And everyone else is, you know, they have the luxury of being able to sit back and kind of watch what's going on for at least a few laps. But as he says, some people very, very hearsed in it. And some drivers, you know, looking back into the silver category, might not have the best qualifying, but you know that they're going to be better in the race. You know, Jan Yo and Raphael Yule. It's going to be interesting to see what those drivers can make of it when the green flag drops, because as you mentioned, a lot of drivers can qualify very well, but some drivers, and I fall into this category, just we can't qualify, we just make it up in the race.
Yeah, I'll certainly agree with you there, Ryan. I am one of those drivers that cannot qualify to save my life. I take fuel out and somehow I still hit the same time that I do on race pace. So maybe consistency is our friend. As we head down towards the grid, we're still only at P10. And we see the first of our custom liveries, of course, the Sim Brothers racing car, as I said earlier, taking on a Jurassic Park theme with even a set of teeth at the front to maybe rival Jan Yao's. You know, Jan Yo, sorry, I need to get out of the habit of this. Jan Yo's cursed livery. But we do have 40 drivers, that's 40 drivers qualified in this split. And we are only missing one driver tonight, that being Mikael Sundström. Again, another custom livery we see here to the left. Little British flags on the end wing plates. Looks very fitting for almost a Ginetta Cup-esque vibe, if we did have such a thing in the UK anymore. As we make our way down the grid, Dario Barzaghi to the left in the Bolus Esports car, choosing to not elect for a custom livery this time out. Tom Shipston to the right in the Ground Zero racing car. Again, a regular we saw at RCI and the British Masters, worked his way up through the silver category and now finds himself mixing it with the pro boys, and very well earned indeed. And the cursed livery that is Jan Yo's car. Of course, giant pair of eyes, a big mouth around the front. We have the Smash, typical British ready-made mashed potato brand on the door as well. As we work towards the back of the grid, engines begin to fire, headlights begin to come on, and cars begin to move. Volker Simsport off there, Matthew Kingston Lee heading down. Another pink car, not Wolf Matuszka this far down, and another Sim Brothers Jurassic Park livery passing by. RPMS boys down this end of the grid. Phil Roberts there nearly running over our cameraman Ryan, dodging left and right, trying to jink everybody around. But there is your 39 cars at Kyalami. Turn 1 into 2. Obviously, 2 is technically the hairpin, as Ryan said, in qualifying. Is going to be an absolute spectacle. I feel like we're going to have 8-9 Ginettas wide, some people napping, some people getting a lightning start from the mid-pack, and it's all just going to condense into kind of like one turn, and then stewards are going to be frantically scribbling down in the comms box next to us. Of course, welcome to any stewards, obviously, in the chat and in the stewards box as well. Of course, without this, split 1 would not be able to be live stewarded. But of course, is split 2 later on report their incidents. But Wolf Matuszka at the front, can he run away with it? Will Christoph Verstappen jump him? As you said, Ryan, Christoph Verstappen is a very quick driver out the box, almost goes like a scolded cat as soon as the green flag drops. But I think my money is on either of these front 2 runners today, Ryan.
I mean, there is going to be at least one saying in all of this. We often look at the start of races and think that, you know, who's going to get the jump? Will the Porsche manage to outdrag the Audi, or, you know, will the speed of a BMW come into play by the end of the straight? What will happen with this? What is going to happen on this straight is going to be a test up and down the field of driver reaction times. Who has got the fastest foot in the West? Well, you're going to find out as soon as the green flag drops. As soon as you floor these cars, there is no turbo to actually get going. They shift, and it's going to be Interesting to see who might fall back a tiny little bit, because you only need, you know, a split second of you know, napping, as you said earlier, to be caught hugely off because of how long the Ginetta takes to get up to speed, and the speed difference that you're going to feature or going to find if the other person next to you does get that jump, because they'll be going 2 to 3 clicks faster than you into turn 1. But as everyone lines up, I mean, you can see in the background how many cars there are on this grid. The start is going to be difficult for those at the back, I can guarantee you, because you end up starting coming around the corner. It is never a nice start at Kyalami when you've got a massive grid, but for the front runners, they've got clear sight going down all into turn 1 and 2.
Yeah, not sure if clean sight is what you want going down into turns 1 and 2. Obviously, the slipstream effect of the car ahead will play a small factor in the race start, but as cars grid up side by side, rolling start, of course, as always at RCI. Wolf Matushka leads the pack towards the start line, waiting for the green flag to drop. Very, very late hold. We're nearly halfway down the straight and the green flag dropped. Here we go then. Christopher Streppen a little bit lacking off the line. Wolf Matushka definitely stomped on that loud pedal a lot. Christopher Streppen pinching towards the left-hand side, trying to get the undercut. Jinked underneath Wolf Matushka. The move is on into turn 1. Elbows out racing already, Ryan. We've got Wolf Matushka being elbowed out of the way. Christopher Streppen, like you say, a scolded cat straight off the line, and the boys side by side through turns 4 and 5. We have a car up the curb. We have contact, I believe, Dario Barzaghi there, spinning in the mid-pack. Everybody being collected. 39 cars into this corner to simply not go. A big mess at the back. I would not like to be a steward on that, but towards the front, the top kind of 10 or so have broken away, luckily been avoided out of that accident. Adam Dubil in the 840 coming under pressure from a car behind, but we just see cars strewn everywhere. Chris Downing caught up in there. Joe Dorber has managed to escape the chaos in the yellow and black striped car, heading down into the latter half of the circuit. This man here, Christopher Streppen, has managed to break away. Of course, the timing has glitched out due to Chris Downing escaping to the pits, so a very unfortunate start to his season. Was expecting big things from Downing in the Volpus Simsport car, but towards the top of the hill here, coming down towards Mineshaft turn 12, this is where the slipstream's really going to be kind of coming into effect. You're going to be drawing ever so closer to the car in front. You're going to be sizing up a move into turn 13 and 14 of the Crocodiles, but nobody in this front train looks kind of close enough. Nobody looks like they're going to be making a lunge anytime soon. 58 minutes of the race still to go. Of course, very early days to be making big moves this early on. Pit window is, of course, open. We're going to see if anybody does decide to pull themselves out of this pack. Jan Yo again in the 48, flying Hellfish Taters. Very competitive up to the back of Shirley, I believe, ahead, riding on board here. We're going to start to see maybe the pack racing effect taking advantage. You see in the mirror we have Hagstrom Vigashu in the 811 in the slipstream of Jan Yo, and we see Jan Yo in the slipstream of Shirley ahead, but Shirley looks to be gapping, whereas Vigashu looks to be gaining. Vigashu looks to the left, tries to size up a move. Jan very late on the brakes into what is essentially turn 2, but no move is to be made at the moment, Ryan. That was an absolutely chaotic opening lap. Big losers in that crash into turns 4 and 5.
Yeah, a lot of big names also caught up in that, who are going to have to return to the pits and, you know, start to go have a recovery drive if they want to be part of this championship. Andy Boardman looks up the inside of Verdi there, the 89 and the 69. Racing hard and, you know, just poking his nose in. At Sunset, though, it is a very, very difficult point to go too wide. We saw a few people try it, but you just see what's already happening is this sort of train and slipstream. Everyone dead and blink and maybe gets a little bit of a better run. Does Andy Boardman maybe a look up onto the top of the hill? It's a blind braking zone is up here. Up the inside goes Andy Boardman for the Guis Riesel Racing Team. Throws it onto the curb to give the space because the car will naturally want to understeer out. But look, when you've compromised your exit, can you see now who's behind? It's Benjamin Heilman looking this way and that way, going to try and get the inside on the compromise. Maximum Verdi and Andy Boardman runs onto the grass. The switch back in the background though for Benjamin Heilman. Look, Verdi is falling.
Yeah, see, like you say, Ryan, being out of sequence that little bit has cost Verdi 3 places in the grand scheme of things. 1 to Andy Boardman, 1 to Heilman, as we see another car dart off into the pit lane behind, possibly Verdi. I did see a flash of green and blue, and we did. And I believe Adam Dubil as well, making an early stop for the Forza Italia team, as Albin Manson finds himself gaining slightly from his start up into P10. Jan Yo here trying to catch the slipstream, and we see now the pack racing on Shirley. The draft is definitely making a good thing for Jan as he darts to the outside, Shirley to the inside to cover off. Jan definitely later on the brakes, draws side by side, tries to make the outside move stick, but then look behind. Hagstrom Vigashue is now poking his nose into this fight, so you end up, look, Jan is just going to lose a place now to Oliver Hagstrom Vigashue up the inside into turn 5 over the curb, squeezing Jan a little bit towards the exit curb, but now Jan has the better run off the corner and he starts coming back into sunset. This is just going to be insane. If every race is like this, Ryan, I don't think I'm going to be able to cast all 7 rounds.
It's too wide in the front, too wide in the back, and actually in the background, Tom Shipston trying to also get in this action, almost too wide there, just kind of looking and thinking if he can do anything to the 37 up in front. But this is the problem, though, is that unless you're like... You don't even need to be 100% confident that your move will stick. You need to be 300% confident that your move will stick, because if it doesn't, you end up in this. You end up battling and fighting, and Jan's now under fire once again from the 811 of Hagstrom Vigashue. If he can hang it all the way around the outside, and actually he can. That is a long old way to take that Ginetta around the outside. And once again, behind now, it's just everyone else is under attack. That's Elgrand in the 741 and the 37 once again, all under fire, and Tom Shipston kind of just waiting in the wings, trying to take the racing line, trying to actually get back into this fight.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy scenes on this pack race, and you get slightly compromised, like you say, Ryan. You have to be 300% almost certain that this move will stick. Otherwise, you end up having a train completely run up the inside of you, round the outside. Look at all the mirrors. You just see a Ginetta of some kind. Everybody following the very wide line. We have a spinner there in the mid-pack. Well avoided, I think, from the white car behind. I didn't quite catch who that was. Possibly Broiker in one of the Ginettas towards the back end of the field. But Redford, very good to avoid it. Jan Yo has decided to come in and clear his pit stop. You see him falling down the list on the left-hand side. But Richard Phillips, again, a name for the RPMS boys. I didn't quite realise he was here tonight. But again, a very strong showing from Mr. Phillips in the Deutschland Masters of the AMG. So again, a silver driver going to be looking to maybe stick it to the back end of the pro drivers, as we have a few guys mixed in. It was indeed Raphael Huell on the spin coming out of Cheetah in turn 15 to find himself diagonally across the kind of pit entry. So not sure what happened to him there, but well avoided from all the drivers indeed. And Ted Edwards getting his pigeon out on to the side of I believe the 203 there, shoving them very far out in sunset, possibly having the door shut on him. Wasn't expecting to find a pigeon up his inside, and then boom, all of a sudden you do have a pigeon stuffed in the door of your Ginetta. But Ted Edwards looking to make moves here from the Race Ventura pigeon team, and Phil Roberts is somewhere in the grid. I wonder if we can maybe catch a glimpse of his car if he is in split 1 somewhere. But Michael Racers in the Red Kings Motorsport car, number 28. There's Phil Roberts. Again, another bird theme livery we have on the grid today. I believe Dario Barzaghi behind him. A duo I didn't expect to be casting ever in a race at any time soon. But here we are, Phil Roberts' bird car versus the Barlas Esports Ginetta GT4. I just can't hold myself together, Ryan. This racing's absolutely superb. I mean, we've got 52 minutes of this, and everybody's racing like there's 2 minutes left. Everybody's trying to get every single inch they can, every single space, and it's just fantastic.
Well, what we have it there as well, as much as esports, we have bird sports. That is the true pinnacle of motorsport, ladies and gentlemen. B-sports, exactly. There we've found it, ladies and gentlemen. We've got it. Close the books. We're done. As looking back on the grid as well, Jordan Daly now coming under fire from the 28, slowly starting to creep in. There's actually a little bit of a break. When I said, you have to be very, very good in a Ginetta to, to be able to pull away. Well, once again, I think Christopher Streppen has had his ears open, because he's pulled out a 1.7 second gap to Wolf Matuszka as it stands right now, at least on the broadcasting tool. an incredible feat considering we are only on lap 4. Now, what we don't know is, could Wolf just be hanging back a little bit? Has decided that the start, there's no need to go as crazy. He's trying to break the tyres in a little bit earlier as the 28 sends it up the inside of Jordan Daly. Maybe Jordan can get the switch back because the compromised, and it's off. It's into the wall as the 28 spins back across the track and stamps on the brakes. Jordan Daly waiting. Ooh, the rejoin, and Tom Shipston gets collected.
A very questionable rejoin there from Michael Racers collected. Unfortunately, Tom Shipston's Ground Zero racing car, 50 minutes to go. Now Tom Shipston finds himself waiting and waiting for the pack to pass. And this is the only problem with pack racing, Ryan. You end up with one car span. And if the guy ahead of you doesn't move out of the way quick enough, you suddenly have a face full of Ginetta stationary on the track where you weren't quite expecting one to be. And maybe that's what happened there to Tom Shipston, slightly unsighted, racing in the pack. The guy ahead jinks, of course, to the side to move out of the way. And unfortunately, Tom Shipston was not expecting there to be a Ginetta trying to rejoin there. But Mike Redford finds himself up into P19. And David Grundstrom, again, another driver from the Deutschland Masters, keeps coming back from Mondays. Must be a glutton for punishment as he comes into the slipstream of Belron's number 100. A little bit of a net code there as Grundstrom sizes up the outside, tries to get the outside line because it does become the inside for the next corner, and it can work out in your favor if the other guy is a little bit lenient on giving you space. But a much better run from David Grundstrom up into turn 5, but unfortunately not a good turn 5, and it does allow Belron to get back through. But all the meanwhile, Broika is looking behind in the Fanatec sponsored Ginetta, trying to size up maybe where these guys are going to start going too wide, and see, of course, if you open the door to one guy, you may end up finding another Ginetta up the inside with him. Being this close in pack racing, it's so easy. One small mistake, like you say, Ryan, can affect a whole kind of train of cars, and you soon find yourself losing 3, 4, and 5 positions.
Yeah, exactly. And the 203 of Hernans for the BRT racing team all over the back of RPMS's Manso. And now this was looking very, very close into sunset. Manso decides to cut the door off and say, no, you're not having the inside for the top of the hill. But all while this is happening, while you're having to defend in a Ginetta, you end up really starting to compromise yourself down some of the straights. So it's going to be interesting to see if the 203 can eventually start to claw away. If anything, you kind of have to rewire your mind in this kind of racing, because in normal GT3 racing, if there's someone in your mirror, you might have to pay attention to them. In Ginettas, you're always going to have someone in your mirror. It's just going to be part of this racing, as the 203 one's a little bit wide. Almost looks like the car wants to rotate around you, but well held through Cheetah.
Yeah, certainly a very easy corner to get wrong, as we saw a few times in the qualifying session and once in the race as well. But Manzo now closing to the back of Broika's car, looking to size up and move technically into turn 2. Looks to the outside. A lot of these guys just holding the inside, but Manzo very late on the brakes, manages to pull alongside around the outside, but then this allows another Ginetta into the fight, and we are now 3 wide down into turns 4 and 5. Everybody single filing themselves out before it gets too messy, like we saw in the opening lap. Very smart driving from a lot of these guys, but Manzo gaining position, and now Broika's finding himself under pressure from the 203. Cycling forward, Mark Elgaard now on the back of the number 37. Looks very similar to Joe Dorber's livery. Very easy to get those two cars confused indeed. Coming through Mineshaft up the hill now. The slipstream is really going to pay a dividend here, as we see a great exit from Elgaard up into the top of the hill. Turns 10 and 11, keeping it very tight on the curb. We see the yellow Ginetta in the background trying to get the switch back, but Elgaard very cleverly defends. Now down into Mineshaft of turn 12. Side by side, want to be very careful, boys. There's a nasty bump through this corner. Don't take each other out. Very, very tight indeed. Elgaard on the inside into the Crocodiles of 13. Keeps it very tidy indeed, but of course the number 37 with that wider line is carrying more speed through 13 into 14 and up the hill. I think Elgaard has just about managed to hold on. A little bit of dust being kicked up ahead there. Hopefully no car sat sideways. We are indeed clear into the final corner of turn 16, but like you say, Ryan, one little mistake and you lose a position.
Very much so. The 741 didn't have the greatest run out onto this main straight. A little bit wide there and a little bit of a squirmy position. You can see the 37 jostling. He's actually going to opt for the inside line, braking on that 100 board and down into turn 1. They still run side by side, trying to get the switch back once again. And the 27, or the 37 even, sorry, retakes 11th position that they had 1 lap ago. And I think this is just going to be the story. You know, when you mentioned that what happens when you meet someone who is your pace, I think basically what we're seeing on screen, that's what happens.
Yeah, you just sit in this loggerhead where nobody kind of really gains, nobody kind of really loses, and you just end up switching places back and forth. But checking in with our man here, Benjamin Howman, hassling the back of Andy Boardman's number 69, Greased Weasel Racing, into turns 8 and 9. The S's coming up the hill. Benjamin is, of course, going to have the slipstream on Andy. Looks to the inside. Andy covers it off. Benjamin jinks to the right, squeezes Andy very tight towards the inside, giving him no room at all. Benjamin going for the switchback, but not pulling it off at all. Andy Boardman getting a far superior run through the top of the hill, turns 10 and 11, but down to mineshaft now is where Benjamin's going to have the draft of the Ginetta area. He's going to be looking to size up and move into the Crocodiles. Turn 13, much later on the brakes than Boardman, gains a lot of time, tries to take the wider line through to gain a lot more speed, but unfortunately can't get the nose of that Ginetta pitched in. But up to the top of the hill, Cheetah 15, Benjamin running very wide indeed, big grab of opposite lock down into the final turn, and he's going to want to maximize his exit as much as he can to try and escape Stewie's jaws of his Ginetta in the 796. And unfortunately no move to be had this lap as we roll on. 45 minutes to go, and still people locked bumper to bumper.
Very much so, and that gap that I mentioned that Wolf managed to pull out, it is actually coming down ever so slowly. 1.2 seconds is now the gap between the 7, which charged off like a rocket at the start, and the 25. And as I says, I'm wondering if Wolf was actually deciding to break in the tires slowly, to bring them in gradually, so that you don't get any graining and that your pace could be better the entire stint. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens to those two come the end of the race. But you know, considering that we still have 44 minutes to go, plenty of time left. Looking back to some of the racing still going on track, Hagstrom Vegas here for the A11 is still hassling the number 1 of Shirley, a silver class car. But I mean, when you're all in Ginettas, anyone's a race. It doesn't matter if it's a silver or a pro car, just anyone in front of you, they're a race.
Yeah, certainly. So obviously no championship implications between the silver and the pro guys. The pro guys on the left of your screen, for those that are new to ACC, of course represented by the whiteboard. They are the top 20 qualifiers in the split who set the fastest hot stint through Kyalami. And of course anybody with a grey background to their number board is what we call a silver driver. So the bottom half of those top 20, of course, 2 different categories fighting for 2 different championships. So keep your eyes peeled. Obviously these 2 guys here, Manzo and Bayron, are fighting for silver honours. So this is definitely for championship points. And Tom Shipston is that slightly behind him, maybe out of sync. Obviously on the board it is the 203 that is kind of next in queue. So Tom looking to try and come back as much as he can. If he's made a stop, fix the damage from the heavy impact earlier on, he's going to see how much he can certainly claw back indeed. But a little breakdown to the week here at RCI. Obviously Monday is Ginetta Cup. Tuesday we have an empty slot, and Wednesday sees our weeknight team championship. Find yourself a car, a friend, and sign up for 80 minutes of close racing in the GT3 class, with round 4 continuing at Spa. Team URL lead Pro and Kessel Run Racers lead Silver. Thursday, multi-class season 10, mixing GT4 cars minus the Cayman, and instead bringing in a Porsche Cup car. Continues their tour to the Nürburgring. Christoph Verstappen leads GT4 Silver, and Rudy Filmalter leads GT4 and AM. And none other than Andy Boardman, ladies and gentlemen, the car ahead here, number 69, leads the Cup class there. And that was on Thursday, so I've lost completely where I am in my broadcast. Friday, of course, follows Thursday, and so does the championship, finding ourselves back in Zandvoort. Jaroslav Honzik leads GT3 Pro, followed closely by Savalainen and Valentin Barrier as their championship fight continues. And Night Owl this week wraps up with the final round, heading to Paul Ricard with a dominant performance from Volkan Bakadan in Pro, and just 1 point separates Galinski and Bilski in Silver. And also coming up this week at RCI, those of you that are eager in the Discord might have seen, of course, the Bathurst 12-hour event happening on the 26th of November. GT3 cars at the famous mountain. Need we say more? Sign-ups, of course, open this week for that. So get your team signed up nice and early to avoid missing out. You can, of course, sign up and pre-qualify for any event at any time by visiting racerci.com. And speaking of racing RCI, Benjamin Heilman still hassling the back of Andy Boardman. This fight could be going on for a while. Like you say, Ryan, the stalemate relationship between the guy that sets a very similar time to yourself, you kind of end up at loggerheads. But Wolf Matushka, like you say, Ryan, you've been watching this gap closely on the timing board, has closed up to the back of Verstappen, and now Verstappen finds himself under fire from the peak performance Ginetta.
I think Verstappen might not have necessarily been expecting, you know, the 25 to have caught back up. I would say this early in the race, it feels like, feels like we've only been running a tiny little bit, and almost 20 minutes have actually gone by. But yeah, the pink performance car has managed to basically nullify that gap that was opened up very, very early on in the race. And as I says, I'm thinking that this might have been just the better strategy that Wolf's been. He knows that you can't push these GT4 tires so hard so early. You don't have tire warmers. You go out there and they are stone dead cold. Even if you get some heat into them on the formation lap, it won't be enough. If you just go like a bat out of hell as soon as the checkered flag drops, you will grain them, and we might be seeing that now slowly. There's still battles all up and down the field, usually a little clumps of 2 to 3, and obviously the leader of the cars that have pitted as well, keeping his eye on that to think where people are in potential relations. Jan Yo in the 48 leads in 23rd position, but he's got the 840 of Adam Dubil right behind him with another battle where it's the 0.2, 0.3 behind.
Yeah, Adam Dubil, a driver I watched in the Cup Series that we casted a while ago. We mixed the Lamborghini Huracan, the Ferrari and the Porsche Cup all in one multi-class madness event. No stranger to pressure, giving pressure and coming under pressure. Remember a backwards and forwards fight at Spa, I believe, between himself and the Lamborghini. And I believe Benjamin Heilman seems to ring a bell in my head in a pink Porsche. But back to the front here, speaking of battles, Oliver Hagstrom Diggershoe, the greatest name in sim racing on the Swedish side, despite what Jesse says about Matthew Kingston Lee, coming towards the back of Shirley for P9. Of course, these guys not fighting for championship points. Diggershoe takes a lot of curb there, runs himself very sideways, losing definitely a lot of ground to the much cleaner exit of Shirley ahead, who only picked up a little bit of grass. But towards the front here, Ryan, I'm going to theory craft here a little bit. What if Verstappen started on a lighter fuel load, and that's why he suddenly bolted from the gate? Obviously, pit stops here only have to add 1 litre in minimum. No need to take tyres. As long as that 1 litre goes in the tank, we say, okay, on your way, mandatory stop cleared. So, what if Verstappen's on a slightly lighter fuel load? He's got a little bit harder, like you say, earlier on. We need to kind of scrub those Pirellis in. We see Wolf there following Verstappen to the T down the hill towards Mineshaft. You know, tucking in the wake of the Ginetta ahead, trying to get every single inch you can, much like this man here, Benjamin Heilman, on the back of Andy Boardman. This fight still going on. No rest for this one. Andy Boardman, excellent defender, no stranger to pressure again from the Deutschland Masters. He saw himself up in, you know, the likes of P3 and 4, mixing it with Dario Barzaghi and, you know, Chris Downing in the Mercedes. So no stranger to absorbing all of that pressure. And Benjamin Heilman is certainly putting him under something rotten here. Has a little bit of a bad exit from both cars. Andy Boardman goes a bit shallow and Heilman goes a little bit wide. So equally cancelling themselves out almost into a move. If Heilman kept it clean, he might have seen the move down into turn 2, but unfortunately not this time. Tucking in the slipstream nonetheless, trying to get as close as he can to the back of Boardman. See, Boardman takes a much tighter line into 2, whereas Heilman takes a much later kind of apex to try and maximise his run through. And that's what it's all about. It's just maximising every single second that you can in a Ginetta.
Yeah, and sometimes you just kind of have to take an alternate line to, you know, what your opponent is, because you have to try sort of something, anything to get by. And you see Benjamin Heilman closing up more and more there as the laps go on. Andy Boardman runs a little bit wide. It might open a move into Clubhouse, but they're just too far back.
So literally every single inch is trying to be exploited by Benjamin Harmon here as we jump on board with the cam in the middle of his car, looking towards the back of the olive green and red striped car of Andy Boardman heading up the hill again. Once again we see Heilman with a much better exit out of the S's, but still can't do anything. Andy Boardman is just absolutely backing up Heilman. And now we see in the mirror, if you look very closely, a Jurassic Park themed car of Manson about to come into the mix. Of course, these boys are all fighting for pro honours with the white backing to their numbers, and not one of them is giving each other an inch. And of course, Ryan, if this was a sprint race, there would only be 6 minutes to go on this, but unfortunately, or fortunately should we say, still 36 minutes left. And somewhere along the line, Matuszka has got past Verstappen. So Verstappen finds himself down into P2, and this might allow Wolf to kind of walk away and try to build a gap on those nicer looked after Pirellis. But still, 2.6 seconds to the good of Jimenez behind in the silver class. Again, the driver that has surprised probably both me and you, Ryan. Like we say, silver is just a colour. Sometimes these silver guys are just as good as the pros.
Yeah, exactly. So something must have happened to the 7 of Verstappen, because the last lap was almost 1 full second slower than Wolf Matuszka's. So something that we haven't caught on camera must have happened to the 7. A bit of a mistake, maybe a running wide, you know, having to catch the car, and that's left Wolf Matuszka by. And we will have to see what now happens to this gap. If it's going to stabilize when Verstappen's got the slipstream and got a little bit of a target to follow ahead, or if Wolf is going to slowly eke out that gap. And what's going to happen to battles like these? Benjamin Heilman, every single time we swap back, it seems that Heilman is a little bit stronger in this sector of the circuit, but it's just so hard to get a pass done through the S's.
Yeah, I'm certainly getting, every time, like you say, Ryan, we switch back to this fight, I'm definitely getting a feeling of deja vu. Watching this time and time again, it seems Stewie, or Benjamin, sorry, as most of you know him, is trying absolutely everything to try and get around the car ahead of Andy Boardman. But Hagstrom Vigeshju again going back to another fight that has been raging on for lap after lap, still not finding his way past the number 1 of Shirley down into mineshaft turn 12. Not close enough, I don't think, for a lunge, but the nearly on pace car does take a look, but does decide to take to the outside to try and maximize the run through the corner of the Crocodiles. 13, this little kink is technically 14, up into Cheetah of 15. It's going to be, I think, Ryan, won or lost in the pit lane, or possibly won and lost by the famous yellow sausage on the inside of Cheetah. I know myself and probably yourself have been under, you know, extreme pressure before, and you've just looked in the mirror at the wrong time, you've looked back, and all of a sudden the yellow curb is flying under your car. Before you know it, you've run wide and given up the position. So if, you know, the likes of Hagstrom, Vigeshju and Heilman can keep up the pressure, it might even force one of these guys into a mistake.
It's gonna be what you have to do with Ginetta Racing, is just keep the pressure up and keep it up for the entire race, because when you, like I said, when you end up with a car that is so similar, no matter even what you really do to the setup, and drivers that are so similar, you just end up in these kind of battles. Hagstrom Vigeshju looks to the outside, trying to try and throw the car to the inside. You can see Shirley running wide there. The 1 does not have the grip, but you're still alongside because you don't have quite enough speed difference. The 811's going to have to hang it all the way around the outside. It is very, very close and just about gets in. Has to shut the door coming into the S's, saying that no, you're not having that position back. So Hagstrom Vigeshju, after what feels like an eternity, has finally got past into P9 overall. Now that wasn't a pass for the class position, but it now does release him to potentially go up and fight the 127 of Manson. Now, something must have happened there as well, because the last time I remember, Manson was behind them.
So Manson was definitely ahead. He's been tacked onto the back of the Heilman Boardman
it's
fight kind of
it's the Heilman Boardman
creeping,
fight.
yeah, creeping forward and kind of inching his way every time, thinking I'm going to gain a little bit here and a little bit there while these guys go side by side. And speaking of going side by side, Christoph Verstappen has flicked some kind of switch on his dashboard and finds himself right up behind Wolf Matuszka again. 0.266 seconds to the good, definitely within slipstream territory in ACC. Typically the window of slipstream begins about 0.6 of a second, so any drivers you see within that margin are definitely going to be getting the benefits, as we see Jan Yo on Breukers here. Breuker is giving up the position by the looks of it, still yet to pit anyway, so he kind of knows the fight has already been lost. And of course Jan Yao going very wide there. Got to be very careful for these Pirelli tires, especially too much curb action. Me and you both know, Ryan, they can slightly lose pressure, and once you get them out that operating pressure window, they don't drive all too nicely. So I'd be very, very careful if I was a lot of these guys, and if I'm not planning to take tires with 31 minutes still to go. And some of these guys, Wolf there, eating the inside of the curb at the S's of turn 8, and not so much on turn 9, but it does kind of compromise the run up the hill a little bit. Verstappen tucking in the wake of the pink performance Ginetta, not giving an inch, really wants to maximize everything they can. This fight between them may be won or lost on pit lane, and we saw in the end of practice Wolf making practice entries down the pit lane. He is an absolute stickler for it. Every round we see him going out, driving around one lap, coming in, practicing the pit entry time and time again, and he has absolutely nailed it. So watch your eyes on that one when it does come to the front. However, Tom Bryant furiously waving at me from the other box across the way for a stewards update. Of course, a massive incident on turn 1. So hope you're ready for some lengthy leading as we watch these guys duke it out towards the front end. A little bit of a loss there from Verstappen, down to 0.5, still within slipstream range though. So we go to an incident on lap 1, turn 4, involving the 225, the 33, the 195 and the 909. A drive through for the 33. The 33 makes a very minor turn on the straight to the right, causing contact with the front end of the 195, spinning themselves and taking out the 225 in the process. Incident on lap 1, turn 2, along the 23, the 37, the 77. Racing incident, 3 wide minor contact. Incident on lap 1, turn 6, involving the 197 and the 840. Warning for the 197 for avoidable contact. Avoidable contact. Incident on lap 1, turn 4, involving the 28, the 8, the 23 and the 60. We have a drive through for the 28. 28 runs wide, launching off the curb, causing a takeout of the number 8. Position not returned. Incident on lap 1, turn 4, involving the 77, the 8, the 23 and 60. The 8 almost saves it, then loses it, holds the brakes for a follow-up contact with the 60, the 23 and the 77, deemed unavoidable by the stewards. Incident on lap 1, turn 4, involving the 77, the 8, the 23 and the 60. Another warning for car 23 for throttling through the incident. Very frowned upon during, yellow flag incidents. You want to be backing off, trying to find a way through them safely without making an absolute mess of the circuit ahead of you. On that one, the 8 throttling through the 8 following the incident. Lap 2, turn 5, involving the 77 and the 6. No further action. The 6 doesn't leave enough room on the inside for the 77. Causes contact. 6 only loses out, hence no penalty. Incident on lap 2, turn 9, involving the 24 and the 77. No further action for a minor contact. Incident lap 2, turn 19, involving the 81 and the 6. Racing incident, minor contact. Incident lap 3, turn 5, involving the 222, the 203, deemed racing incident. Incident lap 3, turn 10, involving the 811, the 48. Warning for the 811. The 811 turns in early, causing avoidable contact. Judged as not significantly contributed to the change in position. Incident on lap 3, turn 10, involving the 37 and the 741. We have a racing incident for minor contact. Incident lap 4, turn 7, involving the 203, the 195. We have 5 seconds for the 195. 195 causes contact, which makes the 203 lose 2 positions. Incident on lap 4, turn 11, involving the 222, the 203. Drive through for the 222, takeout for position not returned. Incident lap 3, turn 16, involving the 6 and the 21. 5 seconds for car 21 for causing avoidable contact. Incident lap 5, turn 11, involving the 28, the 197. 15 seconds for the 197, takeout with position returned. Incident on lap 5, turn 12, involving the 28 to 60. Stop and go 10 for the car 28 for an unsafe rejoin, resulting in takeout position not returned. Disqualification for car 28 for exceeding maximum license points for a single race. Of course, here at RCI, we do have a license point system. Of course, you accrue too many in a race, and we do, unfortunately, DQ you. Ready to kind of think about what you've done and set yourself up for the next race. Incident lap 8, turn 11, involving the 77 to 24. We have a drive-through for the 24 for takeout position not returned. Incident on lap 9, turn 2, involving the 222 to 203, racing into the line of contact. And finally, incident lap 9, turn 2, involving the 24, the 8, and the 34. 15 seconds for car 8. The 8 takes the 24 out. Position returned, and the 34 can unfortunately not avoid contact. So, shout out to all the stewards that have gone through that. Bart, Daniel, Glenn, Jesse, Martin, and Tom, all across the way, waving furiously at us in the box. But back to the fight here. Adam Dubiel around the outside into Mineshaft on Belron, trying to make the move stick up the inside, and he does so. But Belron with the switchback could do it. A little slide from Dubiel coming out of the Crocodiles 13 and 14 up to the Cheetah of 15. And clean move done. Clean move done, and towards the front of Joe Dorber, finds himself now in a little train with Jimenez at the head of it. This could be another fight to bear in mind, Ryan.
Yeah, you've got Joe Dorber's kind of latched onto the back of this train. There's these two in front have been fighting for quite a while, Jimenez and the 86. And as well, have you looked up the front, Christoph Verstappen has managed to find some pace once again in the number 7 car. Hasn't quite managed to ditch Wolf yet. These two are still locked in nose to tail. And that as well, looking a little bit ago, that is kind of what can happen when you pit early in these kind of races. The 840 Adam Dubiel struggling to get through the traffic, because obviously they want to race, they want to keep that position, even though you might say, well, they need to pit, it doesn't matter. But drivers are entitled to it, and drivers are going to do what drivers will do, meaning that you end up with those situations. If you pit early, you have to make that strategy work if you really want to save your race. You know, if you want to make the maximum of it, especially if you're on a recovery drive from the earlier incidents and having to get the car repaired, it makes it a lot harder. You know, if you're just if you get stuck in the traffic.
Yeah, we did see last time out the Deutschland Masters, a lot of drivers pitting early, trying to escape out of the kind of pack mentality they were racing in. But like you say, Ryan, unfortunately, they were just catching the back markers of the field and trying to get past them. Like you say, they're well entitled to race for position, even if it's not for class. You don't have to fold over and jump out of the way. You can defend that position as much as you want, as much as they deem reasonable. And Benjamin Heil with a big lunge there on the brakes up towards the back of Andy Boardman. He must be getting super frustrated in the 796, trying to find a way past the number 69. He's going to be getting bored looking at the back of Boardman. Pardon the pun there, but indeed Benjamin hopefully can find a way through as they head down towards Sunset. Not close enough to make it up the inside, such as we saw the Pigeon car earlier. Boardman's going to be very wise to that, going to be cutting off the inside line, taking a very tight, smooth line around Sunset. Now into the next turn. Benjamin looks so much better on the brakes than Andy does. I'm very surprised Benjamin hasn't just lunged it up the inside into turn 2 yet and made it stick, Ryan.
You would think that, but I think once again as well, by now you would have started to notice the tyre degradation on these cars, and that's definitely going to be a bit of an issue to deal with as well. Not only are you trying to fight this hard, is that now slowly at the top of the hill, you know, when you're really relying on those tyres to give you the grip for the drive down the hill, they're not really going to be there anymore.
Yeah, these cars, of course, equipped with TC, so some drivers might be slightly dialing that up to kind of counter the oversteer that we see as we ride on the splitter cam of Adrian Kowalski in the 86, looking ahead to the back of Jimenez's silver 122 Ginetta. And this is prime example, Ryan, what we said, these silver guys are entitled to race. Of course, overall silver podium would be a P3, but obviously Jimenez does lead P1 in silver by a considerable margin to his next car down the way, as we see Verstappen lunging up the inside into turn 2, outbrakes himself. Wolf Matuszka on the switchback, saw that coming a mile off, I feel. Wolf braked a lot earlier and kind of scrubbed a lot more speed than he needed to, and Verstappen just absolutely sending it into turn 2. This is fantastic, but now look at the gap that Machuska has to Verstappen. We're going to see that update as soon as they cross the sector line. Somewhere ahead there we see Verstappen 0.991 down, lost a second due to the lunge into turn 2. That's absolutely crazy, Ryan.
And you can kind of see, you know, what's happening at the 7 is, you know, has the fastest lap of the race and is obviously getting a little bit bored of being stuck behind the 25. It's just kind of what happens in these races when you're battling someone like Wolf Matuszka who knows how to defend. And you've got to try something, and that something was just a little bit of a too far of a stretch.
Yeah, certainly so. Jumping on board with the splitter cam of Joe Dorber's yellow Ginetta. Fortunately, no crazy lunge towards the top of the hill of turn 10 out of 11. But of course, going to be in the wake of Klawski's car and have Jimenez ahead again, providing a tow to the 86. So although you're getting a tow on your rival's also getting a tow off the car ahead. And these guys now bunching up into the Crocodiles of 13 and 14. If you can kind of make a clean exit through these next couple of corners, clean exit out of the last turn, you can certainly find yourself in slipstream territory coming down the start straight. Although pit window is narrowing off, Ryan. Still 21 minutes of the race to go and only 19 minutes of the pit window. We're still yet to see any driver stop at all within the top 15, with De Nordquist, of course, being the kind of last in the leading pack, as you like, as the last person that has not pitted, although everybody else ahead still yet to take theirs. Of course, 1 litre of fuel is all that's needed here. So I feel a lot of these guys tonight, I spoke to Dario Barzaghi, who of course got caught up in the opening lap incident just here where Joe Dorber finds himself now. I spoke to Dario earlier and he said he is only going for 1 litre of fuel, no more, no tyres. It's going to make it a very swift in and out to try and minimise track time loss. And I feel like a lot of these guys are going to be doing the same. So cars are going to be getting lighter and lighter. And who has skimped the most on the fuel to have the lightest Ginetta? It may be all about the extra 1 or 2 kilos as Jan Yo finds himself in the slipstream of Belron ahead in the number 100. Swedish driver looking back to the rear wing. That hellish looking face that's going to give anybody nightmares. Any children in the room, I suggest you maybe vacate before watching this fight from the rear wing of the number 100 car, as Jan not quite close enough to get a move going into turn 2, but certainly a lot more confident on the brakes from Jan behind. We see the Ginetta gaining quite a lot, a little wiggle there on Matthias Belron. As we look into that mirror, that hellish face, Ryan, I would not like to be watching that going through sunset.
Maybe this is a strategy. It's just to scare your opponents with the livery. But yeah, Jan very, very confident on the brakes. Going to look up to the inside is the 48, the Taders Racing Flying Hellfish car, and they've got it done before the S's. But going on to you know how confident Jan is on the brakes. We've seen Jan before in the Ginetta multiple times, but also drives in real life, has a Legends Hill Climb car, which I suppose is kind of like a Ginetta really. It's small, has a very small engine, and is made of plastic, so it's kind of also the same. But Berrien is not done with it. Fights back, coming down onto the run down to Mineshaft. It's going to be close, but once again, you're fighting the car, you're struggling to get it to the apex, to get to that inside line. The person who's not fighting at all can just get the better, the grip advantage and go outside. And we've had the famous sound. Did you hear that, John?
I certainly did not hear that. What was that?
Someone, well, for people watching the stream and anyone who's sort of historic to RCI, that means that someone has been assassinated. There has been the good old sound glitch of the loud bang. Ah,
yes, the gunshot, classic ACC. I had it happen to myself in one of my streams, and it is like, as a broadcaster stroke streamer, it is one of the loudest noises you can ever hear. And when you're kind of like watching your teammate go around very quietly in the night at Pisano, it's a small jump scare is, I think, what Aris has built into the game. And I don't think they're going to patch it, because it's absolutely hilarious when it happens to certain people. The reaction it provokes is something of a comedic genius. But this battle here, Benjamin Harman still on the back of Andy Boardman and getting a lot of deja vu, Ryan, and all the while Manson is reeling these guys in with those little teeth poking out the front of his Ginetta grille in the Jurassic Park themed livery, the 127, soon to be maybe a battle of the Swedes if Hagstrom Biggershoe, can make up the 8 seconds towards the back of them. Hagstrom, of course, a very quick driver. We saw him in the Asia Masters, wrestled the GTR to a quite admirable position. But back to the front, this pack again, deja vu up and down the grid. It seems every battle we tab back to, everybody is in the exact same place. Nobody's moved an inch, nobody's gained an inch, nobody's lost an inch. It all looks very, very, very familiar indeed. But Klawski there darting out, looking to the inside of Jimenez. Jimenez's tyres maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more deteriorated than the 86 behind, and that could possibly be where the advantage lies. It's going to be how you brought these Pirelli tyres in, as we keep saying, no tyre blankets, of course, on GT4 cars. You're going to have to ease the Pirellis into their optimum temperature and pressure window. Anybody caught, pushing really hard on those opening laps has probably ruined the best part of their tyre. Anybody who's been a little bit easier on the tyre is, of course, going to be finding a little bit more grip. And speaking of more grip, Benjamin Heilman looking for that little bit more just to get past Andy Boardman, but still can't find a way past him. I think Manson's just gonna creep behind and think, these guys come together. Touch wood, they won't. Obviously, commentator's curse is probably about to strike as I say that. But if these guys come together, obviously Manson can easily take away 2 positions. Heilman there using all of the track and a little bit more coming out the S's, trying to maximise this run up into turns 10 and 11, but unfortunately can't do so. Manson, of course, in the mirror, little fangs of the Jurassic Park car just creeping in. Not as hellish looking as Zhang You's livery, but still a little bit spooky to see in the mirror.
Well, the other point is, while all this is going on, while Heilman has, is fighting Andy Boardman and fighting the car as well, you will be slowly scrubbing rubber off those Pirellis. You will be slowly wearing them down more and more. And Manso, who at the minute is just kind of cruising, just following this battle, doesn't really have to push the car. But look, now actually coming into the fray is Manso, caught right back up to the back of Benjamin Heilman, while he's dropped off a little bit to Andy Boardman ahead, and that makes it harder because now the slipstream effect will be less for Heilman, but Manso is now starting to come into this battle. If Heilman catches back up to Andy Boardman again, this is going to be another 3-way battle like what we've got at the front of the grid.
Yeah, a couple of 3-way battles up and down the grid, and we see there 2 very different lines. Heilman using all the way to the exit curb, and Manson kind of taking that little bit of a tighter line, not using so much of the exit curb. And I'm being told by Tom Bryant, when I read this last Steward's report, they are all caught up, which I struggle to believe, as we see another one fire through. Incident lap 18, turn 12, involving the 100 and the 840. No further action, minor contact. Incident on lap 22, turn 8, involving the 100 and the 48. No further action on that one either. The 100 comes too close to the inside, causing a small contact. I believe that was between Zhang You and Bayron. We just witnessed there down into possibly turn 7 of Clubhouse. I think I saw a little bit of a hip and shoulder from Jan, but stewards, of course, deeming no further action on that one. So Tom Bryan and his team of stewards is fully caught up tonight. Of course, another shout out to those guys. We can't thank them enough for their spare time they do give up to provide some great stewarding, some live penalties and some live decisions to make RCI racing that little bit more authentic. As we see the Jurassic Park livery, Sim Brothers Racing, Albin Manson in the 127 coming up to the back of Benjamin Heilman, still trying to find a way just to eke that last little bit out so he can just latch on to the diffuser of the Ginetta ahead as the pit window closes to 12 minutes and 15 seconds. Still a lot of drivers, Ryan, up and down the grid, not pitted yet. I'm wondering how many of them have practiced their stops at Kyalami.
I think it's going to be a complete mad dash down the line as soon as, or as late as possible. I'm wondering how many drivers, though, because we've got quite a lot of drivers here tonight. I wonder how many are going to be caught out. There is a bit of a, issue at Kyalami. There's a quirk at the Kyalami pit lane where if you're one of the cars that's down the grid, as that's one of the pink Ginettas off into the gravel, one of the lapped cars, if you're very far down the grid, you have to come round that sharp sort of hairpin turn, and your pit box is almost behind you. You have to really tuck it in hard to get into your box. Now, we did a race here yesterday, mind you, where 2 drivers, not just one, but 2 drivers, one of them which is in this, oh, in fact, no, they're not in this split, they've been in this field, they missed their pit box. They took an optional drive-through, basically.
An extra drive-through at Kyalami is certainly something you do not want indeed, as the battle between Boardman, Heilman and Manson still rages on towards the top of the hill. So, pardon me, turns 10 and 11, getting all excited over here, just in far too much air for a broadcast tonight. But scenes up and down the grid, they're absolutely spectacular. You know, you don't really tend to find this in GT3 racing. You tend to see the cars a little bit more spread out. Obviously, cars a little bit more sensitive to kind of running in this kind of pack formation, as we say, a little bit more sensitive to the balance changing once you're in there. You know, you lose a lot of front end on some of the cars, you lose a little bit of rear end on others, as a little bit of dust gets kicked up there from Andy Boardman ahead, pushing the limits of that GT4 Ginetta every time to try and keep Stewie behind him. But flicking back down the field, we see the Race Ventura pigeon livery embossed in a kind of RPMS sandwich. We have Manzo ahead, still yet to take a stop. We have Stevens behind in the 77. Both two very capable drivers. Saw them in the Deutschland Masters, I believe. A couple of them might have picked the M6 just to be that little bit different. But the pigeon sandwich with the RPMS as the slice of bread continues down the hill towards Mineshaft. So once again, Ryan, we see another pack of three starting to form. And it becomes very reminiscent of when we saw, you know, the scenes at Alton Park, where we saw pack racing starting to form there, but this time everybody is in the exact same cars. Richard Phillips takes a wide line through turn 2, trying to get the undercut on I think it's Nordquist ahead, I believe so, in P13, according to the number board, and the 137, sorry, in the back of the car confirms that. Jumping on board to the split account, we see how close Richard Phillips is getting, almost bump drafting down towards Sunset. Phillips going to have the outside line, of course, not favourable where all the marbles collect, and Nordquist ahead there, running that a little bit wide. Phillips trying to take a little bit of an alternate line, but down into Clubhouse, they're still equidistance apart as Ted Edwards sizes up the inside of Matt Stevens, sending the pigeon down into turn 1. We need a little pigeon soundboard cue every time we hear that to see that car on stream. Maybe we could set something up on the stream next time, would be quite comical. But Matt Stevens has found his way past Ted Edwards and looking towards the back, or sorry, from the back of Matt Stevens' car down into Sunset. Ted Edwards there just dropping off a little bit. But great to see these guys still fighting, even with 10 minutes to go, still 8.5 minutes of a pit window, and still a lot of drivers yet to pit.
I think there's going to be less. I'm going to call it and say that there's going to be less than a minute of the pit window when everyone starts to dive in. It's going to be, if you can eke out that one extra lap, people are going to do it. It's really going to be a case of who blinks first, I think, in the Ginetta, because no one wants to, as much as the pack racing can slow you down, the double-edged sword of that is that the pack racing can, you know, you've got the tow, you can be towed along by it, you can be sped up by it. If you break away from that and you end up on your own in a in a bit of a nowhere, no man's land, you've got no slipstream, no cars to help you or anything, and you might have blue flags to let through, so you know it can really be detrimental to your race. So I think a lot of these drivers, it's really going to be a case of, you know, who dares blink first, and then everyone will start to come in, I think.
I'm just hoping that somebody doesn't forget to blink and doesn't forget to take their pit stop, because it could be absolutely detrimental, as we've seen a few of the team events go that way throughout the years of RCI, and Verdi there in the 89, very far out of where I expected to see the Virtual Drivers TX3, 89, way down in 21st position. But Deja Vu rattles on. I feel like key word of today's stream is Deja Vu. But Manson backing off a little bit from the back of Heilman. Heilman still hassling the back of Andy Boardman. Definitely driver with most airtime today, I feel, could be between Boardman and Heilman and Machuska and Verstappen, as Heilman still sizing up the inside. Andy Boardman cuts the nose off as he dives on the brakes. Going to be maximizing both of their exits as we ride on board here with the splitter cam of Benjamin Harmon tucking in to the slipstream ahead of Andy Boardman through turn 1, a little jink of the steering wheel, and Heilman pulling out very early to say, I'm still here, I'm going to send it eventually. And of course, both braking at normalized points, no one giving each other an inch or that a little bit of space as we see a little bit of traffic ahead. I'm not too sure who that is, but I believe that isn't Joe Dorber. Joe Dorber, of course, in bright yellow and black striped car. So maybe a piece of traffic here. I believe that's possibly Redford or Barzaghi looking at the livery. Two very similar liveries. I think it is definitely Redford's Ginetta upon seeing it go through sunset. So these guys could have their fight determined by a slower car. And you know, of course, slower cars in GT racing, although the blue flag is shown there, of course, of no obligation to dive out of the way. Such are the rules in Formula One. We see a marshal there on the right waving the blue flag as Matthew Kingston Lee, the greatest name in sim racing, as Jesse Lee keeps telling us, comes out of the pit lane. And the battle between, I believe this is Elgard in the blue and kind of bronzy coloured Ginetta and Byron ahead rages on, switching positions again. I think these guys, Ryan, have been at it for a few laps now. We saw them switching back and forth, you know, a good half an hour ago on the broadcast, and it seems like we were right. They have met their kind of match in the field, and they are just at loggerheads.
Very much so. I mean, Elgard will end up with the, you know, the position in the end because Bayan is still yet to pit in the 100, but you can't pull away and he can't get by. And speaking of people, the first to blink, Christoph Verstappen has finally, with 4 minutes left to go, has decided to bring down the DRS unable, the little number 7 Ginetta down pit lane. Also, Benjamin Heilmann has also jumped into the pits, has decided that once again he's kind of had enough of following Andy Boardman, and Shirley in that was nearly a spin coming into pit lane as well. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Wolf Matuszka may react to to the pitting number 7, or if he's just gonna keep running his race because the pace is still very good for the 25.
Yeah, certainly. So it's kind of like the undercut we usually see in, you know, typical GT3 racing, where somebody is being held up by somebody else ahead, and the car behind peels into the pit lane to say, I'm going to try and undercut you. I'm trying to get a faster stop, and I'm going to come out, smash a lap in, and try and beat you to the end of the lane. So all eyes forward on Verstappen and Matuszka. Obviously, two guys locked together at the front of the grid. Daniel Crimson here on the RPMS SimSport car. I feel like we've not seen too much of this guy down in P25. Again, another guy from Deutschland Masters that put on a great show. Ethan Scott as well ahead. I didn't even spot him on the entry list. So regulars coming back. I feel like I'm saying it a lot, but a lot of regulars at RCI do tend to keep signing up to races, which is great to see. It's a great community to be a part of. And if you haven't already, sign yourself up at racerci.com as Maximilian Verdi makes a move on Matthew Kingston Lee. Both cars, of course, pitted. Matthew Kingston Lee in the silver class, maybe thinking, I'm not going to fight this guy. He's in pro. Crack on. Don't make me lose any more positions than I already have to. But this man here, Wolf Matuszka, comes into the pit, slows the car down to pit lane speed limiter before the board. Now we need to be looking out for Christoph Verstappen. Joe Dorber in the 777 as well. Very nice, clean entry to the pit lane. Got to be very careful you don't lock on too much steering coming around that corner. It's very easy to clip the wall on the inside. And Andy Boardman, again, another driver. We're going to have to look out for Benjamin Heilmann when he leaves the pits to see where those guys come out in relation to each other. Looking down the side of the board, Christoph Verstappen is going to be the first car to come down, of course, out of the last turn, turn 16, running to the line. We're going to need to look to the left-hand side for a pink Ginetta, which will soon become the right-hand side as he rounds turn 1. I'm not seeing a Ginetta. Has Wolf managed to pull it off? Looking at the timing board, he has. He is ahead of Christoph Verstappen by quite a margin as well, by the looks of it. It looks like Verstappen has lost a lot in the pit lane, and it does, of course, promote Jimenez to your provisional leader, along with Klawski in the 86 Ginetta. These guys still with enough time to pit, although it's going to have to be this lap or no lap, with just over 2 minutes remaining on the clock. Because the lap here takes about 1 minute 49 of that time, so no time to go by again. So anybody with a number 1, we're going to see Jimenez, Klawski, Manson, and the number 37 coming in all at once. But everybody else up and down the timing board, Ryan, looks to have secured their pit stop.
Yeah, everyone's managed to come down, and no penalties or anything has gone awry for any of the drivers this time, at least of all the field that is currently pitted. But yeah, Wolf was looking at the pit stop delta times. Wolf was almost, in fact, no, was 2.4 seconds faster than than the number 7 of Christoph Verstappen. So that's where a lot of that time has come from. The outlap for Verstappen though still was fairly good because he's not lost, you know, more time than that overall. So there you go. That is that. And have I just noticed something?
You have, Ryan.
The 86, the pit entrance is behind you. If you have not noticed, I think we might be having a penalty as Jimenez comes in, Manson comes in, and the number 6, for Dominic, you can see him on the right side of the screen. Dominic has come down as be the last car to pit. So every car has pitted in this field except the 86.
Unfortunately, maybe not reading the rule set quite clearly enough, maybe getting it mixed up between the sprint races where, of course, we don't have a mandatory pit stop versus the hour-long races where we, of course, do find ourselves with a pit stop. And speaking of pit stop times, Ryan, Benjamin Heilmann from pit in to pit out, 32.6 seconds. Andy Boardman, bear in mind, who was ahead, they were locked bumper to bumper, 35.2. So our very own Race RCI broadcaster stroke cameraman stroke web designer developer person has managed to jump Andy Boardman in the pit stops with only 1 minute 22 to go. Boardman just, of course, behind there, followed by Manson. Of course, these guys were locked in what we essentially are starting to call trains coming into this race. And of course, look at the gap between Boardman and Heilmann. Very, very big indeed. Now, speaking of trains, this is one that is starting to form with Nicholas Nordqvist at the back of it. Verdi ahead, Elgaard ahead of him. And then who do we have but Oliver Hagstrom Digashu? This is being a battle of the Scandinavians. We have a couple of Swedes in this fight. We have a Frenchman and a Dane. So very, very varied, very, very ruled, drivers set in RCI. I'm getting very, very tired towards the end of this broadcast. So much action has happened and there's still 35 seconds to go and people are still trying to make moves. As we see here, the number 209 and Crimson in the back for the RPMS Simsport is wanting a piece of this fight. Ethan Scott ahead, I believe, in the green and blue car as we watch the helicam through the S's. These guys locked bumper to bumper again. We're seeing a lot of these 3-pack races. It seems 3 is the magic number. We've either seen 2 guys fighting or 3 guys, no more once the field did fan out. Unfortunately, very messy start to this race as Crimson dives to the outside towards the top of the hill of turn 10 and 11, trying to maximize the run down the other side on Hernandez in turn 203. Looking back from the wing, we see Crimson is buried in the back end of the 203 Ginetta. A little bit of a wide line through Mineshaft. Unfortunately, loses him a little bit of time, although he's going to try and maximize as both drivers look like they missed the apex there. I'm not sure if Ethan Scott ahead possibly had a bit of a wiggle on and maybe caught them out, but none of the drivers in that two-man formation hitting the apex there as we flick back to the fight of Nicholas Nordqvist right on the back now of Elgaard. And he, of course, has Matthew Kingston Lee breathing down his neck, who he only passed a mere few laps ago. But this is, of course, the last lap, the last chance to get anything done, and Elgaard and Nordqvist looking to prove who is the better of the two Scandinavian countries. Will it be Sweden behind or Denmark ahead coming into sunset? A little bit of a door opened up, but not quite enough to shoehorn the Sim Brothers racing car up the inside. Both drivers hard on the brakes for Clubhouse. Can't separate these guys at all as they head down into the S's. This is going to be their last lap indeed, and Kalowski has finally realized that, hey, I've got a mandatory stop to make at the end of the race, and I believe retires the car possibly. But this man here, Wolf Matushka, has managed to maximize every single inch of the Ginetta, comes across the line to take the round 1 victory. Very well deserved from Wolf indeed, as Verstappen brings up, taking towards the pit wall to pick up the checkered flag in P2. Jimenez, of course, the silver driver, taking the silver win and P3 overall. And this man here, Joe Dorber, takes the last step of the podium. Benjamin Harmon comes across the line in 5th. And then this massive gaggle of cars, Ryan, between the Scandinavians. What has happened here?
Something definitely has happened from the last time we looked, and that is a very slow Ginetta. What has happened to that Ginetta? I think have they run out of fuel? Has Elgaard
Possibly
run out of
Elgaard
fuel?
out of fuel. Certainly so. Battle raging on between the Nordqvists at the end. Has he got
They
enough in the tank? It's slightly uphill, Ryan. I don't think he's going to make it. There's a car ahead as well. Shirley, it looks like, has also run out of fuel. RPMS Simsport, Ted Edwards coming across the line with a big skid. Clatters into Elgard, maybe deliberately to try and help him along a bit. But two cars, Ryan, might not finish for fuel.
Shirley's still crawling, but the pack is coming up ahead, and Shirley will make it. But Elgard's still running, but everyone has come racing by.
Everyone's just coming past. Massive loss of position. Such a good race, but I mean, a litre or so is literally determined Elgard's finishing position. I think he will make it. Very close passing there from Christian Lindgren, and he does indeed make it. And Kalowski in the pit lane, of course, has not finished. Manzo still to come through. Raphael Huell there in the 21. A very unfortunate race, spun on one of the opening laps. Matthias Tornberg, Pink Panther Racing, a car that not to be confused with the Pink Performance Racing, runs through the coloured flares, and Mike Redford ahead. And Tom Shipston has already finished the race. So Redford to be your last car to cross the line, and Kalowski going from hero to zero by simply forgetting his mandatory stop, Ryan. Absolutely wonderful racing for the hour we had here at Kyalami, and I can't wait for next week already. We're going to have two 30-minute sprint races, so everybody is going to be giving it their all from the get-go. You're going to have no tyre management. You're going to fuel the car for the half an hour. You're going to have no pit lane. It's all going to be settled on track.
And luckily for some of the drivers, that means that you can definitely sort out your fuel before you before the flag drops. But that is going to be such a more interesting dynamic, because this race was already so chaotic and so ignited from the word go. And this was essentially what we call the more maybe calm and collected sprint the endurance race. Sprints historically even more crazy. So that is definitely going to be one to watch.
Yeah, certainly. So it's certainly a slightly older school style circuit of Zolder. Obviously, we've got big curbs, big chicanes. Everybody's going to be trying to maximize kind of every little aspect of that circuit they can. They're going to be cutting it very close to track limits. It wouldn't surprise me if we pick up quite a few warnings on track limits once we head to Zolder. But absolutely great drive from your drivers up and down the grid here today, Ryan. A couple of dramas towards the end, unfortunately, where a couple of drivers running out of fuel that otherwise would have had an absolutely great finish. We see one driver, Raphael Huell, finishing with a 5-second post-race penalty, which would, of course, shuffle him down. So maybe one to forget for Raphael, regular here again at RCI Mondays, but we do, of course, employ the drop round strategy in the championship. So although you might have had a slightly bad start to the season tonight, of course, it is all to play for with 6 more rounds of this absolute madhouse racing to come.
Very much so. It's just been an incredible one to watch. Maybe not everyone's cup of tea has been the Ginetta Cup, but if you're here purely for just the racing, and you can kind of overlook the funny plastic British cars that sound like a bumblebee, it's going to be a fantastic season. I really think so.
We get a closer look at the alternate bird theme livery here. You have 2 bird themes in a row here. You have Phil Roberts with his parrot-esque looking bird. I'm sure Phil will correct me later on in the RCI staff Discord. And of course, Ted Edwards with his slightly blushing pigeon in the 195. It's great to see, of course, custom liveries being employed by drivers up and down the grid. So, of course, if you do want to become a part of this, you can, of course, sign up, qualify at any time at racerci.com. And a quick message from our partners. We have AK Informatica for providing our server solutions here at RCI. However, they also do provide high-end hardware, peripherals, and accessories, including SIM gear. So if you are in their market, then so be it. And Wolf has jumped into the comms box. Hello, Wolf. We will come to you in a minute. And we have, of course, Driver 61. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code with a link in the description below by going to driver61.com. And of course, lastly but not least, Fanatec, your one-stop shop for all the best sim racing equipment on the market. You can, of course, use our affiliate link in the description, and it won't cost you a penny. it does help us with the running costs here at RCI. And of course, check us out on Twitter, RCI_racing. And of course, the like, subscribe, the bell icon, all that good stuff on YouTube does help us grow as a community and does allow us to keep providing these high quality, action packed races free of charge. And one man that has walked in the comms booth very loudly indeed is Wolf Matushka. Welcome to the broadcast, Wolf. How was that for yourself?
Oh, that was so exhausting. I absolutely did not expect to Verstappen to send it in T1 like this. But fair play to him. Well done. He needed that.
It was
And
certainly
he just
a bold
took off.
move.
I don't know. His pace was excellent. He did his best lap on lap 2, or the first proper time lap. I was half a second slower, not really knowing what's going on. I thought he was on like less fuel, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe he did a mistake in the setup screen, but yeah, he just turned out he was on it from turn 1. It took me a while to get into the groove, and then yeah, just consistent laps. I had 1:51.0. That was the only 51 I ever had. I don't even know exactly why. I think I made one mistake there. The average was 50.7 in the end for the first stint. Really good consistency. The car felt good. But yeah, I gotta give it to Verstappen. He was definitely the quicker car today. So I really take that win. That was hard work.
Definitely so. He was certainly on it from the get-go, as you said, Wolf there. Very, very quick driver indeed. And we think, me and Ryan were speculating in the commentary box, that you eased your tyres in kind of a lot more, gently than Verstappen did. And Verstappen just went like a stab rat out of the gate from the get-go and possibly wore those Pirellis down a little bit too much. And then, of course, towards the latter half of the race, yours started coming into the window, and that's where you started to find your pace again.
Yeah, definitely. He was slower after, around 20 minutes in. He slowed down a bit, which I was really surprised, because I thought, okay, this is it. I gotta settle in for P2 and just hope to not lose it to P3. But somehow I was he slowed up. He slowed down a bit and gifted to me the P1 and after sunset. I don't know exactly what happened. He kind of went wide, so no actual fighting for the spot in the end. No trading paint. I hope we can do that next time better. But
certainly a lot of paint being traded.
Yeah, in the end, he even came back on pace, which was interesting. He was basically, every time he was not right behind me, he was 2 tenths quicker. So I had to stay super consistent. Any mistake would have cost me the win. And then I had an awesome pit stop as well, which helped me, of course. But it was a back and forth between the pace, and I think my consistency won it, but he was definitely quicker.
Yeah, definitely. We were looking at the pit stop timer. I think Ryan pointed out on the broadcast that you pit in to pit out 32 versus Verstappen's 35. So again, certainly some big time loss there for Verstappen. Ryan, any words from yourself to Wolf at all? Any questions?
I think we've pretty much covered it. It looked like a fantastic race. We didn't manage to catch what actually happened the first time to Verstappen, but now you've filled us in without obviously an issue in Sunset. We did catch the sort of, not quite retaliation, but the desperate send into turn 1 for the second time, which it was a valiant attempt by the number 7, but it didn't stick, and that lost him another load of time. And once again, we thought that by now surely the number 7 pace must be relenting at least a little bit, but every time it would catch back up. But these Ginettas, we saw it up and down the field all day today. You can catch up to someone very easily, but passing them is very, very tricky.
Yeah, the slipstream is there, but certainly not to the point where you can just draft past someone. Since I'm in the car for the first time here, having done no prior driving in the car, than to quick view, the amount of knowledge I have about how much draft there is, what do you do with the setup is limited. But me, it helped staying with him, the draft, but I got the better exit every time, so he couldn't really use it himself to get an advantage on me. And then, like you said, the send into T1 was valid try. I really appreciate the aggressiveness. It's the right mindset. But of course, I saw it coming and knew from the second he went for it, I knew that he wasn't going to make that stick. But I like the attempt. So got to give it A for effort, I say.
Was certainly, I think, an A-star for effort from Verstappen on that send. It was an absolute monumental one from very far back indeed. But for tonight on the Ginetta Cup on RCI Mondays, which will be, of course, a regular thing next week, we head over to Zolder, where we see the first of our new format of the two 30-minute races, and exciting stuff up and down the grid. And I can't wait to see how that plays out with guys not needing to look after their tires, running lighter fuel loads and giving it even more sends on each other. But it has been a wonderful evening. Thank you for everyone that has tuned in, that has supported the stream. It is very much welcome indeed. And of course, from our partners at the bottom of the screen. So from myself, John Dalton, from Ryan, the multitasker Mawson, and from our winner of tonight's race, Wolf Matushka, we bid you farewell, and we hope to see you again soon on RCI TV.
Goodbye.